Welcome back to Rammin Is Racing. This is one of our podcast episodes, not a short form content video. I know we have been missing since right before the Daytona 500. There is a lot to talk about tonight in what will not be the longest episode you've ever seen us do. Probably here for about anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Um, First off, I just want to apologize right off the top. We didn't intend to be as absent as we've been, but sometimes life happens, and I think we've still stayed relatively active on social media. And there's definitely some stuff to get into tonight. If we have time, we'll get into some tea later on. But first and foremost, there's a lot happening in the news around the NASCAR world, specifically Kaulig Racing. And tonight's agenda is we're obviously going to talk about the Daniel Dye situation at length and what has happened so far and what could happen. We're also going to spend some time talking about, honestly, very solid starts for SVG and AJ Allmendinger in the 2026 Cup Series. And if we have time to talk about more, we will talk about more. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching us on X, hopefully you're having a good evening as well. Feel free to like the stream and share it. Every bit of engagement helps our little channel that could grow some legs and reach more people. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime. Feels like it's been a long time since we've done one of these, buddy. What's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, it has been a long time, and I had some life events happen earlier in the year, and I know you've had some recently, which always throw wrench into our plans. We have grand plans, but listen, the season's firmly underway. We're a month into the season, and I have to say it's been a good season so far in my eyes. I think the racing's been pretty good, so I've enjoyed that. And I'm very happy to dive into some of the topics tonight, although one of them is certainly not what we want to talk about. I don't think Kaulig wants to talk about or Dodge and Ram want to talk about. But in our ever social media society, it's a situation that we've seen more and more happen over the last couple of years, and it's not a fun topic to discuss. But honestly, when you're talking about millions of dollars, I think there's some expectations to be had amongst not just the drivers, but the team in general. And I think one of our drivers severely crossed the line. So disappointed in that. But all in all, I think it's been a great start to the year for Kaulig and the Ram partnership outside of this situation.
Yeah, hopefully we have a chance to dive more into the positives of 2026. But we kick this episode off with a story that has, if anything, opened my eyes to the divisiveness of just how people view the world still in 2026 based on replies that we've gotten and other people have gotten off of this story. Daniel Dye, driver of the number 10 Mopar Kaulig Racing Ram, has been suspended indefinitely by NASCAR and by Kaulig Racing due to um, inflammatory, homophobic comments made on a live stream with Brent Cruz, and I don't know or remember the names of the other individuals involved. I know there's two other people. One of them's briefly in there, and it's a story that honestly keeps evolving as time goes here. And basically, they were doing some. I couldn't even make out the cards. I think they were NASCAR trading cards. Maybe
They
they
were
were another type.
NASCAR, yeah.
Not that that's relevant, but on stream, and Daniel Dye in a I want to tread lightly here. I suppose in a mocking, homosexual voice mocked a IndyCar driver. Is it David Malakis? Is that the fella's name?
David Malukas. Yep.
Um, and one thing kind of led to another, um, and it's a story that, without, all I'll say is Ryan and I were told something off the record, and it could continue to evolve here in the coming days, and we can't really get into what, but um, what's out there now is not necessarily everything. And it's just really disappointing because this isn't Daniel's first offense with a matter somewhat close to this. It's his second one, first one being in 2022. And I'll say this for Daniel Dye off the top. I don't think he's the most talented race car driver in the world. I think he's a solid driver for the lower series who brings money. And at least in terms of him being in the number 10 Ram, very much has family ties to thank for that, I think. I think on paper, when you look at a driver like Daniel Dye and say his former teammate Christian Eckes, if you're the owner of a team and you're not looking at anything other than driver talent, well, one is far better than the other, in my opinion, and one got one of those Ram rides, and the other would not. And um, I I'm gonna throw it off to you in a second, dude. I just want to say my piece right off the top. We reported on this story when it came out. Um, I want to say we were made aware of it like 11 minutes after it happened and was made public. 11 or 12 minutes, something like that. And I first and foremost want to say I understand that even in 2026, people have different views and beliefs on things. And I do think in a lot of cases in life, there is a gray area where things are can be taken either in a positive and or a negative light, not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. But I'm just going to state this because I noticed we lost probably about 8 or 9 followers on X from our take on this. Ryan can say his piece. My views do not necessarily represent Ryan's views. Ryan and I have had no prep on this topic whatsoever tonight. We didn't come in here with a set plan of what we were going to talk about or if we were going to attack anyone or dismiss anything as being too harsh or anything. Ryan is his own individual and he can speak from the heart. And I'm just going to speak from the heart in terms of how I feel. It's 2026. If you are mocking homosexual, bisexual people, whatever, you are part of the fucking problem, not just in NASCAR, not just in, the, prominent Southern view of these things. You're just part of the problem in the world. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen say Daniel Dye did nothing wrong. If you believe that, you are part of the problem. Daniel Dye severely crossed lines while representing and actively wearing on a live stream that he was perfectly aware of Mopar and Kaulig Racing. If you feel differently than that, then it is completely up to you if you want to follow us, watch us, whatever. Totally, you're right. But I'm going to speak from my heart and say this kid is fucking immature. And yeah, I do have, and if we have a chance to get to it later on, a bit of a reason to have a bit of a gripe against the Kaulig Racing team in general. Both Ryan and I do, frankly. given certain events that have transpired in the last 4 to 6 weeks. Um, this has nothing to do with that. This is simple right or wrong. This is how I would raise my own children. Um, Daniel Dye fucked up. Like, there's really no other way around it, and it doesn't seem like he just doubled down on it. It seems like he tripled down on it. And I hear people going, well, hopefully Daniel Dye will be back by Rockingham because it's an off week after this week, and I just can't help myself but sit here and think, are you fucking out of your mind? Like, if Daniel Dye is back in that race truck rather, by Rockingham, then not only does NASCAR as a sport have a severe problem, but the team has more problems than we thought they already had. There's no reason that this guy should be in a Kaulig Racing Dodge Ram truck, regardless of family ties, by Rockingham. I'm not advocating necessarily that the guy loses his job, although if I was in charge, he would have lost his job, regardless of family ties. All I will say is I would love to know how much NASCAR knows and how much NASCAR doesn't know, because all he was suspended was for homophobic comments. And we were made aware today that the transgressions run deeper than even that. And that makes me believe that certain people in certain positions are trying really hard to make sure certain other things don't come to light. And Ryan, you know how I am. I'm someone that's completely about accountability, even if it has to be towards myself. I'm not perfect, far from it, but it's just rather embarrassing. And I can't believe, not just from this incident, there's been a couple other things in the last few months, maybe towards the end of last season too, but how much different I feel about Daniel Dye today than I did 1 year ago. Today, he just comes across as a very entitled, immature snob.
And I think that's a fair thought, fair assessment of Daniel Dye. I personally didn't know Daniel Dye from a hole in the wall until about 2 years ago, when I started following the Truck Series a bit more regularly because of the rumors at the time that Christian Eckes was going to be hired by Kaulig Racing. And just happened to notice that, he was a teammate of Christian's at McAnally Racing, and I just kind of followed him a little bit just to, kind of track how his performance was and whatnot. And, his performance was definitely nowhere close to where Christian Eckes' performance was, but he held his own. Like, he made the playoffs. I didn't expect him to be the best driver in the world, but when it was announced that he was joining Kaulig Racing at the Xfinity level last year, and then again, even coming down to the Ram situation this year, I wasn't negatively impacted by that. I was like, okay, as you said, he's of the Nepo babies that exist in NASCAR, and there are plenty of them. He was far from the best, but he held his own. He wasn't embarrassing himself behind the wheel. So, I took his personality and wasn't my favorite personality, but I was okay with this. But the level of arrogance is probably how I'd look at it today. Last year, as you said, I probably would have looked at it a bit differently, maybe more aloof. But it's clear that he is who he is, and he's not the oldest by any stretch, but he is, I think, old enough to know better. He's in his early 20s, 22, 23, something like that. And we talked about this yesterday, Sean, about the Brent Cruz side of this, and I feel like Brent Cruz is probably getting let off the hook a little bit. He was smart enough to walk away in the one clip that came out, and B, he is 18, a little bit younger, still figuring things out. I think he's probably going to get a bit more leeway, a bit more benefit of the doubt. But what we saw from Daniel Dye in that video in particular was not a good look. All right. I want to start with that. I preface this by saying I was pretty appalled by what I saw, but I'm also not fully willing to, cast a stone towards the glass house. I mean, I was much younger at one point in my life. I've probably used stereotypes in a way that I thought was funny, but it probably wasn't, a little tongue in cheek, myself and things over the course of my lifetime. Like, I'm not innocent myself. I have in my past years done some similar, right? And I think a lot of people, and especially when they're younger, not quite understanding the, what they say and what they do can truly hurt people, don't think about these things. So, in general, I'm not trying to, I guess, burn the house down in this situation. But as we've learned more and more, and we now know that there is a second video that came out earlier this morning, and there's potentially more out there of him going even further, right? And he's kind of touched on it. He didn't just say this in the span of a 2-minute video clip. He's doubled down. He's tripled. Hell, it sounds like he might have even quadrupled down some various things that kind of cross the line. And, listen, you, me, everybody else, that's general public. Obviously I wouldn't say in 2026 as a society, we need to be better and we need to try to, be more respectful and cognizant of all humans, of their race, their religion, their complexion, the whole nine, right? Like, it's important that we improve ourselves as humans. But what we say in the comfort of our homes isn't going to have the same impact as somebody like Daniel Dye, who is a professional athlete who races at the NASCAR level, represents a huge brand in Ram and Dodge. What he says, the platform he has, right, wrong, or indifferent, carries a significantly more weight behind everything he does. And it's the inability to recognize that responsibility and kind of the carelessness in which he went about it. Listen, we kind of want to, when we look back at the last time this kind of happened at the highest level with Kyle Larson, right? It came off so easy. It was pretty clear that this wasn't the first time or the second time even that he's said stuff like this or acted in this manner. And I think when you look at forgiveness, second chances, third chances, will he be back by Rockingham? You kind of got to look at the level of intent, and it just felt so intentional and so demeaning towards somebody that, to the best of my knowledge, didn't know or say anything to Daniel Dye, do anything to cross a line that would, make Daniel Dye feel like David Malukas is anything other than a stand-up person, outside of just happening to meet him at St. Petersburg. And I can tell you, as an IndyCar fan, David Malukas, he drives for Penske, right? He's a Team Penske IndyCar driver. He's at the top of his game. I could guarantee you he could drive circles around Daniel Dye in anything he put himself in. So Daniel Dye was completely out of line. And I am disappointed in him and the way that he represented the brand, because this has caused a situation now where it puts Kaulig and Dodge and Ram and even NASCAR in a tough spot. Like, I really do think, while I told you this earlier this morning, I think the Kaulig and Ram relationship is fine, is going to be healthy no matter what happens to come out of this situation. They will probably do what Ram wants to happen, right? If Ram says, you know what, this is not what we want for our brand, we need to move away from this, they'll move away from this. If they say, you know what, we're willing to give him another shot, they'll put him back in the car. I think Kaulig is going to do exactly what Ram wants in this situation. And I recognize that Randy Dye, it was very instrumental in Ram and Kaulig coming together in the marriage that they have. But in this situation, I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think this has kind of crossed that threshold of doesn't matter your talent level, doesn't matter your name, doesn't matter who you are. This is a situation where, it's if he was let go, it would be deserved and understanding. And I don't think anybody would bat too much of an eyelash. Now, maybe the blowback on social media would be extreme. We've seen some of those replies today.
It's going to be extreme from some people for sure.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you're a brand ambassador, and the multi-million-dollar brand is the name that's on the line. It's their reputation at stake. So, this is one of those deals where you got to play the game. And Daniel Dye not only played the game very poorly, he played the game in a distinctly inhuman way, and that is incredibly disappointing.
Let's not forget that Daniel Dye, and I believe, I don't want to state this as fact, so I stress when I say I believe he is the lead representative and a co-founder of the Race to Stop Suicide foundation that he supports and puts out there and has been awarded for too. And there's been some stuff come out about that this week that we'll touch on in a different video that doesn't look particularly great either. But do you know how many people, unfortunately, commit suicide because their views or their sexual orientation or just being bullied comes into play? Like, this is a really fucking bad look all around. And people can say, well, just keep it to on track. Well, Daniel Dye hasn't done enough on track to look the other way in this. If Daniel Dye still has his job come next week, it is more than likely because of his father, Randy Dye, and how instrumental he was to the Kaulig and Ram deal. But let us point this out. It's not clickbait, the thumbnail. I know some of you might think that Daniel Dye could be released as clickbait. There were some things that were brought to our attention today that I wasn't going to bring up, but I am going to bring up because I've noticed other people on social media have started to notice it. So I won't source who told us. But much, much, much earlier today, Lionel Racing, pardon me, canceled all the number 10 Mopar Ram Racing diecasts of Daniel Dye's. They're all gone. They don't exist anymore. And I do believe that the Ram vehicles specifically were all going to make order because I think Ram themselves were going to push it over. That was some of the talk behind the scenes. So, like, if you're sitting there waiting on a Justin Haley one or a Butterbean Queen, and you're worried it's not going to make what's the term for that, Ryan?
Mock minimum qualifying order.
Yeah, I think that Ram is going to push that through Ram/Kaulig, and I think you are safe to pre-order those diecasts. But they got canceled. But on top of that, dude, if you go to kauligracingshop.com now, which Ram has a massive hand in all their merchandise now, the driving force, Daniel Dye has been erased completely. And in fact, AJ Allmendinger is listed there now. So that's not usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall a suspension in any sport, let alone NASCAR, regardless of what the suspension's for, making someone's merch disappear completely. And we know that Daniel Dye has a meeting with Kaulig tomorrow. And I almost don't know if it matters what Kaulig wants, as you were insinuating earlier. there's a very real chance, despite Randy Dye owning a massive, Stellantis dealership down just outside of Daytona International Speedway, he may even own more than one and have his hands in other Ram and Stellantis related businesses. It may not matter who his kid is at this point, like you said, and they may have made the call, Ram that is, and Stellantis, and been like, this is literally our first season back. We are 3 races in. Behind the scenes, we are desperately working on a cup program to be ready for 2027, likely 2028, which, by the way, the timing of this is terrible because not only did Chris Rice make mention of this was a huge week behind the scenes for Kaulig Racing and other involved parties. When I reached out to our source about all this today, someone who's been very accurate with a lot of things, Kaulig Racing, they suggested that a lot is happening right now with Dodge and Stellantis and Kaulig Racing, and whether that is still able to be turned around quick enough for 2027 or it needs to wait till 2028. There's still a lot happening. And for this to come out when it did was probably the worst timing it could have been. And before I throw it back to you, man, I know there's a lot to unpack here, but also the Chris Rice the Chris Rice radio hit this morning on Sirius XM. You and I have acknowledged that Chris Rice does not have the best PR presence, and I realize that we are a little biased in saying this because we don't think very fondly of Kaulig PR or their social media account managers after they blocked us for basically no reason whatsoever and then informed certain team parties that they probably shouldn't talk to us. Chris Rice went on that radio, and if you have the Sirius XM app, if you pay for it, you can go listen to that interview right now. And he never once throws Daniel Dye under the bus. Doesn't even really criticize him at all in the interview, but just says that there's a lot more cameras now and a lot more, the drivers are under the microscope more. They're all under the microscope more. And it very much comes across like he was more upset that Daniel got caught than the act itself. And he said he could throw Daniel under the bus, but he won't. And honestly, just a really poor view from a team CEO who has a lot going, despite some of the public criticism he took for the Ram Race for the Seat show. Has a lot going right for him when you consider where the team and the organization is now compared to a couple years ago. Just a really bad take in general, and I do think, dude, when you look at the fact that Lionel canceled their diecasts immediately, not postponed, not suspended, flat out canceled. And then all the merch was removed from the Ram and Kaulig store. It kind of feels like Ram said, that's it. We'll see. We'll see. And I wasn't sure how I felt about this earlier because I was on the record with a NASCAR journalist we were speaking to today. And I said, I have a really hard time seeing Kaulig cutting ties, but I keep going back to what you said, dude, about, well, you know what? It might not be Kaulig's choice. If Rams decided that's it, then that's it. And I'm kind of leaning towards, regardless of how positive Chris Rice might have sounded in that radio interview, this might be it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a couple things. Again, I'm very personally hesitant to throw stones, glass houses, and all that. I know we kind of disagree on this part, but as somebody that took a while to figure my shit out in life, that these kids, 18-year-olds, I still think Brent Cruz is a kid at 18 years old, even though he's legally an adult. Daniel Dye, even at 22, and he should know better, and he's been through the ringer, and he's already been suspended for teabagging somebody, which, it's kind of apropos to this whole situation, right? Even at 22 years old, there's still a lot of runway to grow and mature and be a better human being. It's hard for me to sit here and say, this is who he is at his core. It could be. It very well. I don't know the guy from Adam. It could be who he is, but it could also be the wake up call he needs to become a better, more mature person. And again, like everybody's life situation is different, and everybody is treated certain ways, and how you grow up, whether you have means or don't, kind of dictates a lot of these behaviors. And obviously, he's grown up in a family that's had means, a healthy amount of it. His dad was able to fast track his career by being such a big, person within the Ram Stellantis organization, having some money to put his kid in race cars and good equipment and all that. But when you're given all of these things, right, and you don't have to work for it as hard as maybe you or I, it's going to slant your personality. It's going to slant your behavior. And it's not until you get slapped across the face that something like, with something, this is serious. And he put himself in this situation. But this is the type of situation that you either grow from it, right? Or you just completely flounder away. And we don't know which way we're going to go here. So when it comes to the Chris Rice hit, I'm, again, taking the more lenient viewpoint on this, in the sense that, yes, Chris Rice, as the CEO of Kaulig Racing, as the boss of this individual, right? It is in his hands to basically decide, at least we think, right? Or maybe it's not in his hands. It could be Ram. But it's in his hands. It's under his watch. How do you handle this situation? When you go on, Sirius XM channel 90, and in the realm of NASCAR, it's the largest media base, right? It's going to reach the biggest NASCAR audience. You have to be very careful in how you handle these situations. Because if he just completely tosses Daniel Dye under the bus and runs him over and says this is completely unacceptable, this behavior will never be tolerated at Kaulig Racing, that creates a dynamic, a situation that's really uncomfortable. Because what if Ram does come in and say, you know what, we're going to give this kid another chance, right? We want him to stay in the tin truck. And now you've got Chris Rice, theoretically, in this situation, completely throwing him under the bus. And now you got to work with this kid. He's under contract. Rams wants to keep him.
Let me cut in here for a second and ask you this question. I'm not saying he should have threw him under the bus. If it was me, yes, I would have, but I'm not Chris Rice. But he never even says he was in the wrong in the interview, and that's a fact. Never once says Daniel was wrong to do what he did. That can't happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something he should have included. I don't disagree, because again, we're sitting here saying he shouldn't have done what he did, and then it was, conduct unbecoming of a professional athlete.
And for the record, as a 37-year-old male father of 3, no, I would not do something that stupid that Daniel Dye did. But when I was 18 to 22, would I have? Quite possibly. Probably even did at times. But you know what I wasn't? And you mentioned it earlier on, a brand ambassador to Ram, to Mopar, to Stellantis, and to Kaulig Racing.
Yeah, the responsibility changes when you're in this type of position. And that's and again, right, wrong, or indifferent, this position he holds, this power in a way that he holds, because he does have the power to influence people. He has the power to influence kids. He has the power to influence adults. We saw on social media plenty today that there are many people out there that are very comfortable and with what he did and how he said it and the behaviors around that, right? There's, I didn't touch on this earlier, but I'll do this super quick. Here in the United States in particular, I know you're up there and outside of Toronto, right? Back in 2020, during the Me Too movement, our political spectrum shifted very hard one direction, to the point where if you sneezed the wrong way, you were getting canceled, so to speak. And now in 2026, we've kind of shifted back the other way. And it's now very comfortable for people to say what they truly mean at heart and know there's not going to be a lot of consequences for it. And I think this was a situation where Daniel Dye, again, sitting on a live stream, shooting the shit with his bros, not even contemplating who he is, the brand. He had the giant Mopar logo on his shirt. He was representing the brand in that moment.
And they made mention that they had 41 people watching them at the same time.
Right. So, but even in that moment, wearing the brand, as the brand ambassador, just spits off what he's thinking. And yeah, it's just one of those situations where it's like he shouldn't have done it. And to that point, I don't remember the Kyle Larson situation very well. I mean, this is quite a few years ago now. I know the blowback was harsh and quick and swift. I don't recall if Lionel canceled his diecast cars or if his memorabilia was pulled from Chip Ganassi Racing's website. I don't remember that. But I definitely think it's not nothing that this has happened, right? I don't think you can sit here and say, well, this is just the status quo. This is how corporations handle this. I don't think that's true. I think this was definitely intentional that his stuff has been pulled. I think it's very, very likely that he's raced his last race for Kaulig Racing. Is he going to be out of NASCAR completely? I doubt it, but I don't think it's out of the realm with what we've seen today, what we heard, conversation we had behind the scenes with some folks that tell us that this isn't the first time this has happened, and there might be additional evidence out there to prove that. And if there is, and NASCAR's seen it, and Kaulig has seen it, and Ram has seen it, he's done. And I don't think I think he should be. So at the end of the day here, I just feel like there's definitely enough fuel to this fire to tell me that his time at Kaulig Racing has likely come to an end. But if it hasn't, just quickly on this, I agree. He won't be back at Rockingham. This, the program that he's got to go through with NASCAR, the sensitivity training and all this stuff, that's going to be probably at a minimum 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe longer than that. So it's not going to be quick any way you slice it. He's going to miss multiple races at a bare minimum and very likely out of a seat altogether.
Yeah, it's weird because earlier today I didn't think there was a chance he'd be out of the seat, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought about what you said. And, verifying the Lionel Racing and then the Kaulig and Ram Shop merchandise stuff. I just don't think that's something they do while the driver is under suspension. I could be wrong. And I also wouldn't be shocked if it was, okay, well, we got to let you go now, but, a year from now, we might rehire you for one of the truck rides. You know what I mean? And if anyone thinks that that's out of the realm of possibility, AJ Allmendinger, when he lost his ride at Penske, when he got nailed for the Adderall thing, which is nowhere close to the same thing, might I add. Penske not only gave him multiple IndyCar starts after that down the road, they gave him multiple Xfinity starts or whatever it was back then, nationwide or whatever, which he won in, might I add, and almost, he was in position to win the Indy 500 before the seatbelt thing happened. But yeah, it could be for PR purposes, we need to let you go, and as long as you clean your act up, we'll get you back in down the road. So we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. If I was the one in charge, he would lose his seat. But if he doesn't lose his seat, I hope he actually does learn from this process and matures from it and grows from it and can be an example to other individuals, right? Like, I would say, there's people that are going to go, well, doesn't he deserve a second chance? The problem is it's not his second chance. It's like his third or fourth chance. So we'll see how it all plays out. Speaking of AJ Allmendinger, though, man, he is going to be in the driver's seat of that number 10 Ram Mopar truck with the for NHRA fans back in the day. I know some people point out the Keselowskis from the NASCAR side, but it was Scott Jeffreon and Daryl Alderman long before Ram was in NASCAR that made the Mopar paint scheme famous, the Rainbow Warriors, if you will, and not the Jeff Gordon rainbow thing either. It's kind of like a meeting in heaven. I was talking to my dad about this today. I grew up watching NHRA drag racing with him, and our favorite drivers were Scott Jeffreon and Daryl Alderman, the Dodge boys, who ran the exact scheme that AJ Allmendinger is run this weekend, and coming full circle to my favorite NASCAR driver, AJ Allmendinger, running that scheme. It's kind of like a dream come true. You don't think it would make it better if we found a way to get into victory lane, but that's very unlikely with no sim and no notebook. Maybe there'll be some late race chaos that allows for a chance at that. But really cool to see AJ jump in the car, or in the truck rather. But as Chris Rice said today, it took some convincing. He wasn't just all over it, and we do believe AJ Allmendinger is set to drive a race for the 25 truck later this season. But given what's happened here, dude, he might see some more truck time than he was originally anticipating.
I am curious to see how this plays out, right? Like, I know Ty Dillon was already in the truck at Atlanta, and we were fairly confident we were going to see him later in the year at a road course or two. So it wasn't like he wasn't going to do it. And I know, Chris Rice was very vocal last year that AJ was not going to drive anything other than Sunday. But yeah, I think this definitely opens the door potentially for him to run a handful more truck races. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, honestly. I know, it is apples to oranges, but running a truck with the downforce that the truck has is at least in the ballpark to what the current Cup cars are doing. Much closer anyway than the Xfinity cars. Or Riley cars. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and I know, again, and you touched on this much earlier in the show, but there's never a good week to have something like this happen. Never. But I think there was a lot of momentum coming from Kaulig Racing. They've been solid to start the year on the Cup side. They've been, I think, right where we at least anyway thought they would be on the truck side, and they finally got some wind tunnel time, and sounds like they've made their first major step in the right direction on their sim program. And after a couple weeks off coming into Darlington, I think there was a little bit of excitement that they were going to maybe have a little bit more performance in their trucks this weekend. And obviously Darlington, with it's not officially throwback anymore, with all these throwback schemes that they put on the trucks, and it was going to be a big weekend for Kaulig. So I'm hopeful that even with this distraction, and now with AJ in the truck, that they can find a little bit of performance and run okay and run decent. And I'm hoping if AJ does run well in the truck this weekend, that gives him a little bit of confidence going into Sunday, because we know last year, or at the Southern 500, he brought it home P5 in the Cup car, right? So a little extra track time to get himself warmed up, and hopefully that will help him translate to a good run on Sunday, because while I would say I was disappointed with how they ran at Las Vegas last week, they were a 25th place car all day long. I was expecting a bit more from the mile-and-a-half program. In general, their year's been very strong to start with. So, they're still only within 2 points of the cut line on the playoffs, 4 races into the season. That's really good. I'm super excited about that. I think they have a chance to run well again this Sunday and get themselves back into above the cut line for the chase. So I think of all the weekends for him to get a little extra seat time, Darlington was a good choice. And I hope he takes the opportunity to get comfortable in the car and hopefully translate to a good weekend.
Yeah, I think they were about a 20th place car for the most part. I was wondering what happened when he fell down. I think he finished 24th, but he was running in that like 19 to 20 area for a while. And then I found out this morning, I don't think it's one of the notes we included in our social media post about Chris Rice's radio hit, is he actually smoked the wall, which I did not catch, and it bent the toe link in the car, and that was kind of it for the car's speed, which would do it. But either way, at Las Vegas, you expect, regardless of what AJ Allmendinger is driving, past history shows he's usually a lot better than a 19th or 20th place car at that track. And I do think the extra seat time could help him this weekend. I really have no idea what to expect, but I can guarantee you this much, man. Not only am I happy to have a family man in that truck with integrity and dignity, and it'll be his first start with Ram, but like AJ Allmendinger goes back a long way with Stellantis, Ram, Dodge. Like, once he was done with Red Bull, that's what resurrected his career. He went to Gillette Everham in the number 10. That's right, the number 10 to finish off the season. And then they ended up rebranding to Richard Petty Motorsports, and obviously he drove the 44, and then eventually the 43 for a few years. So there's a history there for sure with this brand and AJ, and I really hope for a solid weekend. Selfishly because of the pace scheme he's running, but just in general, he deserves it. And I'll tell you what, I don't care how much Daniel Dye has driven trucks and how little AJ has. One is a far superior race car driver to the other in every single facet. There is not a single facet in racing that Daniel Dye is on AJ Allmendinger's level, and that is just a fact. And I think the team in general is better to have AJ Allmendinger in that truck this weekend, helping build a notebook for that track than Daniel Dye. So kind of a happy accident in a way. And AJ's been good to start the year, right? Like, he's made the most out of no sim time, almost no aero help, or no aero help whatsoever, no support from RCR or ECR, and he finds himself tied for the 16th position right now, 4 races in, and it's kind of hard to argue with that, right? Like, if this is where he floats between here and 20th or 21st for a while, like, that's not bad for where that team's at and the uphill battle they have going against them. The other person that's not bad for is SVG, who is the other guy tied. There's 3 of them. I forget who the third person is. There's 3 of them tied for that 16th spot. And SVG obviously had that unfortunate spin out that could have been way worse at Las Vegas. Could have ruined his day. And he spun out a few times here. I think he spun out in 3 of the 4 races and yet has salvaged great finishes in many of them. Dude, I got to say, we talk about SVG on this channel a lot. I know we've been away for a while. I do realize that we started at Daytona and Atlanta, followed by Phoenix and then Vegas, and that Daytona and Atlanta, and hell, even Phoenix, are not your traditional NASCAR tracks. But SVG has gone out there and made the most out of what he's been given. He's been the most impressive trackhouse driver to date so far this season. And I think his gains are very noticeable to start the year. He's ahead of where I had him being.
Yeah, and you forgot the most important one, COTA. So, he didn't win COTA, but he collected a bucket of points there and ran very competitively as we expected him to.
Right, I guess we're 5 races in Cup, right?
Yeah, and Phoenix is the track where he spun out 3 times and managed to. I'm not sure where he finished in Phoenix, but it was good. It was like 12th or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah. So he made
that impressive.
Yeah, so he made nothing out into something at Phoenix. I don't know what the hell happened to him at Las Vegas. He was pretty much dead last the whole race. He finished dead last, 36th. I wasn't listening to his radio or anything like that early and couldn't get it back. There's no cautions in Vegas. What it is. Those races happen, but
damaged the splitter too.
Yeah, so I mean, he was kind of, didn't have a good week in Vegas, but 4 out of 5 is good, like really good, and he was up there in 5th in points going into Vegas. I don't know how far he ended up falling because of that last place, but
he's tied with AJ for 16th.
Did he go from 5th to 16th? That hurts. But yeah, I mean, he was top 5 in points through a month. That's incredible. That's above anything I had could have expected from his performance. And I was expecting him to take a jump. I mean, he showed that at the end of the season last year, right? He went into the, I know he got knocked out after the first round, but the last handful of races of the season after he was eliminated from the playoffs, he ran very well on the ovals. He found something that was working for him. His communication with his crew chief on these ovals really stepped up and went the right direction, and that really carried over. And Phoenix, I think, was a good example there, where he literally spun 3 times in the race, and every time he just marched himself back forward and got a really solid finish. And it's easy to say, you know what, Daytona, all right, Atlanta, all right, super speedways, you just got to survive. And he didn't just survive, he thrived. He ran well at those tracks too. Coda was Coda, but then he went to Phoenix
let
and
me ask
showed
you
it.
about Coda for a second. So last year, Coda was by far his, and not that it was a weak performance, it was not, but it was his weakest road course.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear he struggles there a little more than the other places.
It is. It's interesting.
He seems to burn the tires off more at Coda than the other road courses. He finally, towards the end of the race, raced his way up to second. I would argue most of that race he was a 5th to 10th place car, but was able to get up to second. And I thought maybe there was a shot he was going to get Reddick, but ultimately didn't. And Reddick drove away from him at the end. Is that just a Coda thing? Or, like you and I talked about in the off season, have teams had a chance to study his data, study what he does in the car? And do you think it's just been, or it's just a matter of teams have closed the gap? Do you think it's a teams have closed the gap, or do you think it's a Coda thing, or do you think it's a bit of both?
I think until proven otherwise, I think it's a Coda thing. And even then, he still finished second. And, on the short run anyway, he gave Reddick all he could handle. I agree with your assessment that for whatever reason, he can't quite hold the tires as well at Coda as he can the other ones. But last year, he was that 3rd to 4th place car, right? It was a Kyle Busch, SVG, Allmendinger, Bell, and Byron, I remember, were the best 5 cars. And he was not the best car, but he was good. He was top 5 good. And this year, I would say he was probably 5th to 8th good early. And then they made some adjustments and had a restart that got him the track position. And then he was right there, right? He was running second. And listen, Reddick was on a heater, right? Winning the first 3 races. And we know Reddick is very good. Reddick is a top 5 road course racer in NASCAR on a bad day.
He's just been insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously Reddick, who is currently at the top of his game. He was just unbeatable that day. But I don't think I don't feel like that's necessarily going to translate to every road course. Did the field get closer? I think they did. I think in general, the field will be closer this year, but the gap was so significant at all the other road courses. I mean, we're talking legitimate 15, 20-second gap, right, between him and second place at most of the other road courses. I don't think they've closed that much. I fully expect him to, again, I will backpedal and say winning races at the cup level is very hard. Things have to go just right. You got to get the strategy right. You got to make, the cautions fall the right way. Mechanical issues, you got to keep the car under you the whole race. I don't think he's going to sweep the rest of the road courses this year just because mathematically it's not that easy. But performance-wise, I still think he's pretty far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, no, look, and you know what? He doesn't need to necessarily dominate all the road courses if he's going to be as impressive as he's been everywhere else. Like, I know there's some probably diehard SVG fans out there that are, thought that he was going to go and clean house at Coda, and it really didn't happen. Didn't happen in practice, qualifying, or the race. But I'm telling you, the gains he has made, and I understand people might look at Vegas and go, uh-oh, but he spun and he had some severe damage. And Vegas specific, out of the 5 places they've been, I think there are only 5 races in Cup, in the Cup Series this year. The most, and I know some people might say, well, no, it's Daytona or Talladega, or Daytona or Atlanta. Trust me, it's not. Take a look at Tyler Reddick's Atlanta car. The one place you cannot afford splitter damage out of those 5 tracks is Las Vegas. It will kill you. It is a traditional mile and a half cookie cutter type track with banking. And once your splitter's toast, you're in a lot of trouble. So SVG had a uphill battle from there, and it might have been even further damage than that. I just know there was splitter damage. He's been impressive, man. He's been way better than I thought he was going to be on the oval so far. And if that continues this weekend at Darlington, which he's had a mixed bag of results at, I don't think SVG fans have a reason to worry. Obviously, it's a much different point system this year than the years past, but I think without a shadow of a doubt, he's going to win. What have we got? I guess we only got, 3 road courses left now?
Yeah, there's only 4 on the schedule.
Yeah. So I will bet he wins 2 of the 3. I think he'll win San Diego because nobody has been there, and I think he'll win one of Sonoma or Watkins Glen. But even that might not be enough. He needs to run good at the ovals, and thus far he's shown mass improvement.
He's done it. Yeah,
very impressed with what he's done.
I will say this: obviously, very hot start to the season, and if it continues, he will pretty much cakewalk his way to the playoffs. But I do think, same with AJ, right? I think they got off to a really hot start, gave themselves a good points buffer. But I think they're going to come back to the mean a little bit. I think the other teams, like Chase Briscoe is a great example, had 4 horrid starts. We know Chase Briscoe and that Joe Gibbs Racing equipment, they're going to go forward. There's still, I think, some motion to happen. I'd fully expect him to settle into the top 20 in points. I think AJ is going to be right there too in the 21st, 22nd range. And listen, at that point, it's going to be a dogfight for the last couple playoff spots. Without winning in, it's going to be a dogfight. And I think he can race his way into the playoffs. But I think I would be, even today, I would probably lean towards him not making the playoffs because I just don't know if that consistency is there yet on the ovals. But I have no doubt that he has shown leaps and bounds improvements over where he was last year. And he's going to be fighting tooth and nail to make it, and he very well could.
Lynn in the chat pointed out, by the way, our admin over at our SVG Nation Facebook group, please check it out over on Facebook. Mentioned the WeatherTech is going to be on SVG's car this weekend, which is impressive because they went down to 0 races. So that's something that's happened relatively recently in the last few weeks. So good on them and Trackhouse for getting that done. I guess the last point I want to make, man, is Tyler Reddick's off to such an impressive start, 60 points or 61 points ahead of second place. But I wonder how NASCAR feels seeing 2 2311 cars at the top of the point standings 5 races in.
Salty. Very salty. But I don't know, man. It's good for the sport. It is legitimately good for the sport that Michael Jordan, 2311, Tyler Reddick, and Bubba Wallace, man, he deserves his flowers. He's been super consistent, super fast. The amount. Good Morning America was at COTA. Good Morning America. I can't remember the last time Good Morning America had anything to do with NASCAR, with the exception of the one time a year where the champion gets to do their media tour in New York, right? But, Gail King, I think is who it was. I'm not super familiar with the show, but, one of their lead anchors was there, was a VIP of Michael Jordan's, did an interview at the track, was the guest of the race. That is incredible exposure outside of the realm of our bubble that we live in. And the NASCAR bubble is not small by any stretch, but it does not have near the reach as a baseball, a basketball, or obviously the NFL. So to get that global exposure, to get that national exposure on platforms that Barstool was doing exposure hits, those are very important and very critical for NASCAR. So yeah, I'm sure there's a little salt in there that it's, that they're still licking their wounds a little bit, but you can't deny the ratings. You can't deny the name, the face, the recognition of Michael Jordan and what he's brought to the sport this year. It's been by far the best thing to happen to them. And I think they're just going to have to deal with that and say, hey, you know what? This is best for business. And it's going to take a while, but I think they'll put their ego aside and realize that in the end, the agreement that came about is going to be mutually beneficial across the board.
So let's end this show with a little bit of trivia. I got one question for you. You cannot use Google or any other means for help. You have 7 seconds to come up with the answer to this. Okay. Cup Series related, so I'll give you a head start. Out of the Cup Series drivers who have made all the starts, who is dead last in points?
This year?
Yes.
Alex Bowman. Oh, wait, he hasn't made all the starts. I would say Riley Herbst just because I can.
It is not Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst is actually is much higher than I thought he would be. Riley Herbst is 23rd.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
Seriously.
He is 4 points behind Kyle Busch. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. Hey, Stellantis money. You may want to go get him out of RCR.
I see it. I see where you're going with this.
It's Connor Zilisch, dead last of all the Cup Series drivers who have made all the starts, despite being in good equipment, despite having the advantage of 2 super speedways and a road course. There's a lot of people thought he would set the world on fire, and I can't tell you how many times you and I have been on this channel and said there is an adjustment to be made in the Cup Series. You can be as dominant as you want in Xfinity, but there's an adjustment to be made, and there may not be a bigger example than that than the first 5 races of this season for Connor Zilisch. Thoughts?
I mean, I'm surprised he's dead last, but I'm not surprised that he's struggling. We have beat this into the ground over the years that we've been doing this. There's a reason that it took Chase Elliott 90 races to get a win. It took Ryan Blaney 86. Ty Gibbs still hasn't won a race after dominating the Xfinity Series for a couple seasons. Chase Briscoe took a while to make the leap. Who else? Cindric dominated the lower series. Hasn't done much of anything in Penske equipment. Cole Custer, multi-time champion, hasn't done anything in Cup. You can be elite at the lower series, O'Reilly series, Xfinity series, whatever you want to call it. And that jump to Cup is insane. The cars and equipment are so good and so equal that the margin for error is fractions of 1,000th of a second. And being perfect, because that's what it takes. It takes being perfect for 400 miles, 500 miles, for 4 hours, week after week after week, is an adjustment that just takes time. And I have no doubt that Connor Zilisch is the next Kyle Larson. I truly believe that. But it's going to take him half a season to get comfortable in that car and just settle in and just finish some races, run mid-20s, honestly, is kind of where he needs to be initially. Same thing we saw it with SVG. He was out to lunch the first 12 races of the year last year, finishing in the 30s week after week after week after week. And here he is running up front. So yeah, it's anybody that comes in and says these rookies are just going to set the world on fire are setting themselves up for disappointment. And it's not a knock on Zilisch. It's not. He's going to get there. But it's just another beast at this Cup level. And his equipment's good. It's not great. We've seen Ross run all right. We've seen SVG run well. Like, the equipment's there. But it's going to take some time to get acclimated with the car, with his crew chief, with just everything involved with it. So, yeah, I mean, I am not surprised that he struggled. I fully expected him to, but being dead last in points is definitely is rough. That's going to be a hard thing to dig out of. And season's long though. I fully expect him to get himself in the top 25 probably by the end of the year, but he's not making the playoffs this year. Let's be certain of that.
Yeah, it's wild. I didn't know it was that bad when I went to look it up, but sure enough, it was. All right, that's going to do it for us. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all. Check us out over on Patreon, patreon.com/Kaulig Nation. Big shout out to our channel sponsors, Lynn over at SVG Nation on Facebook, Alex over at Dinger Nation on Facebook. Dude, where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, you can find me roaming around on X mostly, either at my Yacht Racing 45 handle or at our Rammin Is Racing handle. You and I share duties over on that. And of course, our Facebook channels. I haven't spent a lot of time over there recently, but I still check it out. So you can just find me anywhere on our Kaulig and SVG and Rammin Is Racing channels on all of the various streaming platforms.
We will pay close attention to the Daniel Dye Kaulig Ram story as it unfolds. Tomorrow night, AJ Allmendinger reunites with Ram Stellantis in a Mopar number 10 Dodge Ram, whatever you want to call it, at Darlington. I'll be watching. I'm sure Ryan will be watching. Will any of you be watching? Let us know in the comment section down below. And we will see if SVG and AJ can continue their solid starts to the season at the Lady in Black on Sunday. For Ryan, I'm Sean, and we will see each and every one of you in the next video.